if you're dating, do everything that you can in your power to date locally. But if you find yourself in a long-distance relationship, can sometimes happen, even if you're being intentional with your love life, be very intentional about your communication and how it is that you go about it. Because if you aren't, it's going to fall apart real quick. All right, Gary, today we're going to be talking about long-distance relationships. And I'm pretty sure you were on one of the masterminds recently with our clients. And I'm going to talk about a client openly. I'm certainly not going to say her name, but she was relatively new. And her strategy was, because she's a traveling nurse, she's like, what I'm going to do is date guys in many different parts of the country and just kind of see which one sticks. And if it does stick, I'm willing to move. I'm willing to be with that guy. And essentially, she was setting up her love life for long-distance relationships. Like she wasn't even thinking locally. And it brought us to a topic, just talking about long-distance relationships. So we thought it was probably a good topic for today. Needless to say, long story short, I was not a fan of this strategy. And I think we'll get into it today as to why I feel that way. But Gary, what do you think about long-distance relationships? What's your thoughts prior to being a coach at Love Strategies? Like, what was your thoughts on long distance?
I mean, so most of my contacts with long-distance relationships is just looking at the research on, basically, everyone wants to know, like, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing for long-term relationships? And generally, people make the assumption that it's got to be worse because you're not physically together. And it's one of those things where, like, once you start digging into the data on it, for long-term established relationships, long-distance relationships aren't that bad. And in many ways, they're even better than what the researchers would call proximal relationships, or basically just like the normal relationships where people kind of like live together. So generally speaking, for long-term relationships, long distance can work. You're right, though. I was on that mastermind call, and, in those coaching sessions, we are coaching people about finding love and dating. Long distance means it's something very different, particularly in the world of online dating. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of shed a little light on kind of your perspective from the dating side of it.
Yeah. Well, zooming out on dating, I mean, dating has changed a lot over the past many hundreds of years. And most importantly, over the last 30 years, ever since the internet has been formed. And since we've now been able to tap into this dating pool of people from anywhere around the country or even world, suddenly we're finding ourselves in so many long distance potential relationships because the internet connects us in that way. And it's causing a lot of challenges for people, because what they're finding is that, yeah, they're getting all these matches and they're talking to these guys like, oh, I live in LA, you live in New York, you seem great. But what it does is it creates an unrealistic expectation of who that person really is. And what can happen what I've seen happen over and over and over again is people are developing relationships with people that they don't even really know. They haven't really met, or they've only met a couple of times. And then if, and it's a big if, they find themselves actually in a relationship, in a proximal relationship, suddenly they're like, holy crap, who is this person? What? I didn't know anything about it. I don't actually know you, because we had this kind of fantasy relationship. So when it comes to dating itself, I'm very adamant about keeping it local when possible, of course. Now, there are obviously exceptions, right? We had a client who lived in Alaska, and she happened to be a flight attendant, or maybe a pilot, I don't remember which. And so she was always traveling to San Francisco and a few other places, and she lived in a very remote place. I'm talking about 500 people. So in that case, that's an exception to the rule. Of course, I would obviously be exploring those areas. But in most cases, if you live in a city or an area that has a population of over 20,000 people, or you're within a 30-minute drive to a city with, of course, many more, I would highly recommend keeping your sites local, because it's just going to set you up for just much less pain and heartache in your love life.
Yeah, and I think, what you're describing is that, they're living this fantasy relationship, and then they don't have that IRL relationship, like in real life experience of like actually like doing dishes with somebody and paying mortgage. Like, it's just, you get to fill in the blanks in a long distance relationship with a lot of best case scenarios.
Right.
And that's just not how real life relationships are. Oddly enough, that what you're portraying, I knew you were going to kind of go that direction, but I think that, which isn't a great case, right? That's the best case scenario. Because the other thing that happens with these long distance relationships, particularly in the world of online dating, is you meet a lot of people who aren't real people at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're fake, they're scammers, right? And it's like they're from a whole other state, they're from a whole other country in some cases. They're sending you pictures that aren't them, they're sending you information that aren't them. And it's just like, I know that's one of the pieces of advice in Love Strategies, Little Love Steps is to meet people in real life as soon as possible, because that way you get to make sure that it's actually it's a real person you can touch and interact with.
Yeah. It's amazing the scams that exist out there and how effective they are on very rational people. And it seems like, as an outside person, it seems crazy to think that someone like a woman would give some random person online $100,000. Okay. It's not even comprehensible. But that story exists many, many times over again. I've heard it over and over again. And when you get into it and you actually hear how it started and how it continued from there, it actually makes sense in some ways. Obviously, it still takes a certain type of person to fall for that. But they're very, very sneaky. And these people who are in different countries, they'll be usually traveling men who are just they're away. A lot of times it's military is a big one. So if he say, hey, I'm on military leave, I'll be back in 6 months. And then, he just found out that he's getting deployed, but he just needs $500 to get his gear for his deployment. Now it's and they get you on a little yes. And maybe it's $25 just to I'll send you $25, then you send me this. And before you know it, you get a little bit of compliance. And then that turns into big money. So back to all of this, with online dating, it is simply a tool to meeting people offline. And if we think of it as a tool and not a way to actually date, it's just a tool to get us to meet people, then why would we even be messing with someone who's not local? The way that we highly recommend when using online dating, which is why I think our methods are so successful, is that we get offline as quickly as humanly possible, so that we can actually vet this person and see what is the deal.
Right, because you don't want to lose sight of the thing that you're really looking for, which is a real life relationship, right? And if you want to have a internet relationship, you can go to any chat room. I mean, there's a million other ways to do that, but that's not actually what people are looking for. And so, it's so simple, but it's such an important reminder. Keep in mind what you're actually looking for, and make sure that you're optimizing your behaviors for exactly that thing. And keeping these things online is not what you want. And so you'd have to wonder, why does this other person want to keep it online for so long, or keep it this weird long distance? And so, we talked about the scammers, just the most classic scam in history of relationships is just cheaters. You're meeting a guy, he's not trying to take your money or anything, but it's he's away, he's at distance, and it's well, what's he doing? For all you know, he's got a full other family or two or three at different parts of the country, and it's just he travels. And so, again, is that the kind of relationship you want? I mean, one of the things you talk about the Little Love Steps is, does the person you're interested in have the type of lifestyle that is conducive and fits the long-term relationship you're looking for? And so these people that are all over the place, and now I'm here and now I'm here and I'm here, and I'm not going to see you for 3 months because I'm doing God knows what, is that what you want? Is that your love vision? Is that how you see your relationship future? And the answer to that is probably not.
Right. That was actually, I think, the most important point you made when we were speaking to the nurse on the coaching session. Sorry, after watching this right now, we're not picking on you, but we have to talk about this because it's just so relevant to this. And you said, I think, something along the lines of, what kind of guy would travel all the she was like, oh, they're coming to me for the first date. And you're like, what kind of guy would travel all the way from LA to wherever she lives for a first date? it would likely be a man who's got something to hide. Like, that's not a normal thing for a guy to hop on a plane for basically a first date. Either he's looking for a weekend fling and a lot of fun, which, I would imagine as a single guy, like if a woman in Texas who's like super cute is like, hey, you want to come here for a weekend for just like whatever thing? I'm like, it sounds kind of fun, but that's not as serious. I'm not actually looking for something real. Or there's that, or I'm married. And I got to see this like, well, looking for my wife if possible and go with the perfect thing. Is it not like real commitment? It's not like high value commitment focused men who have options are not just jumping on a flight to travel across the country to go on a first date.
Right. And, the other piece of that, she had, I think she lived in Austin, right? And it was like, people were coming from LA, people were coming from Arizona, and then somebody else was flying in from Florida. It was like, it was a really complicated solution to a simple problem. And what she thought the problem was that there were no available guys to date in Austin, which, probably just isn't the case. It just, a lot of times when things don't work out with one approach, people immediately start going to like these more complicated things. And it's like, no, you just, instead of like changing entirely and doing like flying guys in all over, it's like just going to change like a little bit and just shift your strategies and tactics just slightly, and you'll start finding what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, she was a brand new client, so we were, I think, being kind. I don't know. That was on a tough love Tuesday. I think we have these evenings that we call them tough love Tuesdays. We have one tonight where I can get a little cranky because I'm a morning person. I've been up since 4 this morning, so they're at night, so I can get a little cranky with people. So,
when you say night, I mean, be clear. Be clear what night is. It is 7 o'clock at night. Night.
It's 6 o'clock.
No, it's actually 6 o'clock. Come on, Paul.
Oh my God. Whatever. I'm not that mean. I don't think I'm that mean. But
you're not.
I could be a little bit cranky, but it's all good.
But the thing is, so, long distance relationships in terms of dating and starting your relationship that way, I think we're kind of both on the same page, and it's just not the best way to do it, right? I mean, there's many better ways to do it. You're setting yourself up. We talk all the time about, you got to set yourself up for success, right? And so starting off long distance isn't the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, like you said, there are some scenarios where long distance relationships can work. And so what I always say, and I was actually just talking to Jessica before this, is if you do find yourself in a long distance relationship, and they do sometimes happen, let's say, for example, you are traveling for work and you're at a conference and you live in Boston, you're in LA, and meet someone who's just absolutely incredible. Well, and you just really click and you spend the night getting to know each other. Everything's great. And then you kind of develop from there. Well, that's a little bit different because it happened organically. It wasn't necessarily like an intention plan, like on my date. You just met someone. And I've actually been in a situation similar to that as Boston to New York. And we tried to make it work and it really didn't work. So I think there's some situations where it makes sense to lean in if the reward is worth the risk. And in my case, it definitely was. Now, a few things to keep in mind if you do find yourself in a long distance relationship that I always suggest. Number one, if you are in a committed, exclusive long distance relationship you're not yet married, there should be a plan within the next year for you to live near each other. And if not, then I would not consider moving forward. For example, I had a client once who was in a long distance relationship with a man. She lived in Ohio, and he lived in maybe somewhere on the East Coast, like Atlanta or something. And he was military over there, and he was not going to be leaving his post for like 6 years. And she had kids that were in middle school, and she wasn't leaving until they were graduating. And they were in this long distance relationship. And that is a relationship I would not recommend. I'm curious on your thoughts on that, because I know the data suggests that you can make it work, but I think if we dove into it, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, I think those kind of situations where 6 years, that's a long time with kids involved. I mean, you're adding several layers of complexity to a relationship, which it's just, that's not ideal. It's probably not what people are looking for. Thankfully though, a lot of the long distance relationships that people are involved in are kind of like what you originally described there, which is they're long distance for a period, and then they have kind of a set expiration date. Like they have a plan. And that plan thing is really important because, there was a big study that just came out, literally like 1 million, they brought a bunch of long distance relationships stuff together. They said 1.3 million data points and 33,000 respondents, but essentially the number one reason why long distance relationships fail was a failure to have a plan. They just didn't have an exit strategy. They didn't have like how do we transition from this thing to the next thing? And there's other research showing that one of the biggest danger points for a long distance relationship is when they're not at long distance anymore, right? It's those reunions. It's when people come back together, like everything's going great and like the relationship's amazing in lots of different ways. And then they get back together and it's like, crap. And it's exactly what you said about the dating thing earlier. It's like the fantasy's gone. It's like, no, we actually have to learn how to like live as people together. And that can be tough.
Yeah. I had a female friend, and she was dating a guy in England for like 7 years, something like that, but now following his principles. And then they moved in together. He moved to Boston, and I think they broke up within like 2 months. It was so quick. It was shockingly quick, but I get it. Like they're now, farting next to each other. Whatever happens once you live with someone, and you're just living your normal life. And sorry to be vulgar here, I couldn't think of a better. Like, what happens when it's no longer these weekend exciting vacations, and now you're just living together, you're fighting, and you're like, can put the toilet seat down, and he's like, can you just put it down?
Right.
Whatever it is, when you pee. Oh, God. So, have a plan.
I mean, I think one of the things, I was going to say, have a plan, but I think one of the things that's a reality about long distance relationships is like, sometimes people want to be in long distance relationships, and there's almost like a darker motivation to it in the sense that they have attachment issues. They're highly anxious. They're fearful about living with a partner. They're not comfortable sharing their space with somebody else. That, they live apart just to deal with the fact that they're really picky. They're really fussy. They don't want to deal with someone who leaves cabinets open like I know you do. There's a bunch of things that people, like, it's like a weird self-preservation thing in it, where it's like, they were hurt once before, and so now they're just not willing to cross over and have that living together arrangement. And so if you have some of those kind of reasons behind your long distance, it's not a practical thing. It's more of like you said, like a self-preservation comfort thing. When you then do have to or choose to move in together, that's going to be a tough transition.
Yeah, I agree. So definitely have a plan, be on the same page. And this is a time where we don't need to be subtle at all about our needs when it comes to commitment and where we see our life going. If you're in a committed, exclusive relationship with a man who lives further than, I would say, 3 hours from you, however it takes to get to one another, I would say it's time to be extremely clear about what it is that you want, where you see your life going, and what level of commitment you're really looking for. This is not a time to play coy and like just see if he kind of comes around. Let's be real with each other and get on the same page. And if that's uncomfortable to him and he's not interested in that, or vice versa, you're not interested in that, then I would not recommend getting involved, because the distance does not make the heart grow fonder. It actually requires much more work to keep it going, keep it alive. Which goes to another... I'm sorry, we're going to say...
I was going to... Because you just mentioned it. You said 3 hours. Is that... like, so I know one of the most common questions I get, at least about this, is like, how far is too far? Like, is that what you think is about 3 hours?
In my opinion, it depends on where you live. And so within Love Accelerator, we are, and with the Little Love Steps, I'm pretty monstrous on this. I always say keep it within 60 minutes. Like, if you're online dating and you can be intentional about your distance, and then 60 minutes... the maximum, or miles, however you want to put it. Depends on where you live. And if you're in a major city, keep it within 30. I mean, really keep it as close as humanly possible. Now, obviously, again, there are certain scenarios. We had a client the other day, I think it was in Philadelphia, maybe where you grew up, the Amish or whatever. And it was a pretty far, trip to any major area. Okay, fine. If it's got to be two hours, then it's got to be 2 hours of that situation. But usually I've been doing this for long enough as a view to notice that most people live within a major city and they are creating these long distance situations because they don't believe that there are high value men locally. And so they're starting to look externally as if that's the solution to all their problems. And it tends to not be. It really does. It tends to not be. And so that's where we really recommend leaning into this process. And if for whatever reason we dive into it and we find out, yes, it really is your location. Let's say you live in Eastern Kentucky and you happen to be just like this liberal intellectual who only wants to talk about, you know, the New York Times and the latest that you read. Sorry, I'm really brushing with a broad stroke here, but let's say that's the case, then maybe it's time to consider moving. But I wouldn't recommend getting in a long-distance relationship. I'd consider, honestly, just packing up and moving. And I've also had that conversation with some clients where it's like, okay, if you really feel this way, and you really don't think that there are any men in your environment whatsoever that you can meet, then let's actually talk about relocating. Because what are we doing here?
Well, you know, if it's a priority, it's like, you know, what behaviors are you undertaking of optimizing to the outcome that you want? And if you want to find somebody and they're really, really, really aren't where you're at, and that's got to be true, right? Then, you know, you think about going somewhere else. That's going to make, ultimately, because you're pursuing fulfillment, right? If you want to find fulfillment, it may not be where you're living right now, right? Yeah. We've never been a more mobile society than we are right now, probably. So it's like, it's a great time to consider going somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. And we have a few active clients right now, I know for a fact, who are mobile and they are, and I tell this to clients sometimes when they're considering relocating, just don't relocate for men. Certainly don't relocate for a man that you're not exclusive with, okay? So not just a man. If you want to relocate for quality of men, I'm open to that idea, but I wouldn't move completely for that. I would get an Airbnb or a short-term rental, live there for 2 months. You're single, like go enjoy and try out these different places. That's assuming, of course, you are mobile, which a lot of our clients are and can do that. Go try it out. I had one client and, God, it's bringing up so many different scenarios, but I remember she lived in California and she had this idea that Silicon Valley, I think it was like 2 hours from her. Silicon Valley is where all the guys are that she wants to date. And she's like, I can't get past it. Those are the types of men. So I'm going to just keep traveling over there or have them come to me, and kept getting herself in these long distance situations. And I'm like, why don't you just get an Airbnb over there and see if you like it down there or wherever she lived? She's like, never thought about that. And she did it. She actually did it and she liked it. Because she was wealthy, she had access. I'm like, just go rent a place, check it out. You're single. What is there to lose? Start going to the local wineries or whatever it is that Silicon Valley people do, and go talk about tech and go find yourself a guy. There's probably plenty of engineers over there, and that's something I'm totally cool with.
Yeah, and I think that's smart, right? It's like one of those things that people fall in this trap of like all or nothing thinking, where it's like, I have to either live here or I have to live there. And it's like, no, like there's this middle ground. It's like, go do a trial run. Like that Airbnb thing that's genius.
Yeah. So I did that for a while. I was always traveling. I moved from Boston to New York. Oh, no. I actually did Boston to LA. Discovered I did not jive with the LA style. I like LA, nothing against it. I like to visit, but it's just like not incongruous to myself. And then I moved to New York, and oh my God, that city ate me alive. Like you know me in my sleep, and I was not getting a lot of sleep over there. And I was like, I gotta go home. Take me back to Boston. And I haven't left since. So, but I definitely wasn't moving for a woman. I was just moving because I wanted to meet different types of people. I thought it was a great idea, which led me back to Boston. But anyways, I have a few other important points for those who are in long distance relationships or finding themselves in a situation. One important thing that I find myself talking about a lot is this idea of quality communication versus quantitative communication. Because I find that when people are long distance, we find that the relationship doesn't exist unless they're in constant communication with each other. So that means texting every single morning, throughout the day, at night, phone call right before bed, or else all hell breaks loose. Many kind of touch points throughout the day. And what I tend to recommend is paring back on it, because I think being on your phone in general is not a very healthy thing for many different reasons. You don't need to get into that. But also, it's much healthier to have a good 30-minute FaceTime where you're actually building a connection and talking about the things that matter one time in the day than 25 touch points from social media, Snapchat, texting, yada, yada, yada. Because you're actually getting to know that person and you're getting away from the fantasy and getting into real life. And you can see if, once again, this thing is real or not. I don't know. I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
No, I think that's 100% right, is that, you have to make sure that your communication is going beyond like basic light updates. Like, I'm in the line at the DMV, I'm stuck in another red light. Like it's gotta like that starts to feel like anxious and like we have to be in the, like you said, that constant contact. And that's not how proximal relationships are, right? And so like, that's not the good parts of relationships. The good parts of relationships are like, maybe after the end of a long day, you do have that quality 30-minute FaceTime and you ask, how was your day? And you kind of like meet each other through those moments. And so that way you get the best of both worlds. You get quality communication and you also get like a real life glimpse into what it would be like when you're living with that person in the same state. And generally speaking, and the research shows that the people who are in long distance relationships, again, they're in a long distance relationship. So obviously on some level they're making it work if they're in that relationship. Those relationships actually have better communication in many ways than people who are living in proximal relationships, mainly because they have to. Like, you have to be a really good communicator if you're going to sustain a long distance relationship, because we know like for weeks on end, like that's what you have. Like, you don't have those physical connection. It's something like an average, that's a huge data set. It was like an average of 20 days between times that people in a long distance relationship actually saw each other physically. So that's a lot of space. I mean, that's 19 days at a time stretch. It's like, it's just us over FaceTime or Zoom or what have you. And so you got to find other ways to make it work.
Yeah. Whereas like if you work at home with your wife and you see each other every single day at all times,
Yeah.
Yes. Before you know it, you're just like, I don't know, I just go just going about your day. So that's interesting.
Yeah, like we kind of think, you have to be together, and like there's pluses and minuses of everything. And so, a couple of the other, just real quick, some of the strength aspects of long distance relationships is that when you're in a long distance relationship, you have to prioritize emotional intimacy over physical intimacy. And so we know for long-term, happy, fulfilling relationships, emotional intimacy is the bread and butter. That's the sustaining life force. And so if you're in a long distance relationship, you have to prioritize through no real fault of your own. You just have to do it this way, emotional intimacy. That goes along.
Define as emotional intimacy. Like, what do you define?
Emotional intimacy is like being able to share. It's like, if we're going to have good communication and not be near each other, it can't just be like dumb stuff we did. It's got to be like hopes and dreams and vulnerability, and it's got to be comfort and support and sacrifice. It's like all of those really veiny like relationship things that we know are important, that those have to be there. Because, when you live with somebody, you can just get by on the day to day of like, Whole Foods was out of, the organic bananas again. And like, you can have 10-minute conversations about inane stuff that just kind of like gets you through the day and never actually talk about anything before.
Gary, I'm going to get intimate with you for a minute. Invulnerable.
Is it about organic bananas?
I miss you. When are we getting together next? I want to hang out in person, have some man-to-man time, all right? So I'm calling you out. That's my vulnerable moment. When are we going to make it happen? All right? I'm getting you to New York City sometime. I'm going to go there. You're going to come out for a night. It's going to be wild.
Perfect.
Bring your wife.
It'll be wild till about 7 p.m.
No. I will stay out if it's New York City. Don't you worry. This weekend, I'll stay out. If my sleep schedule gets so out of whack, like if I stay out till like 3 a.m, then I can sleep really far in. The problem is if I go to bed at like 11, that's a bad one, because then I'll still wake up at 5 and then I'm all messed up. So it's like either I go to bed at 9 and I wake up at 5 or 4. At 4, I live at.
All right, I thought you were inviting me to New York for a wild Boston 7 p.m. night that I just was not going to be able to handle.
That could be fun too. We could also just, hey, maybe we'll go date picking.
That's fine too. I'm good for any kind.
Oh my gosh. Any other good tidbits you get from your from the research that you found?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think just some practical things. Because some people, you're going to find yourself in long distance relationships, either for an extended period of time or maybe just for a summer, be a 3-month period. There are very practical ways to help make it work. The one thing is regular contact. And like we said, regular contact doesn't mean like every moment of every day, and it's not like 10,000 texts a day, but it's just you need, like you said, have a plan. Like have some regular schedule, like, oh, every night between 7 and 8, we're going to talk, we're going to do, and that kind of thing. Make your long distance partner a part of your regular life. So they should know who your friends are. They should know who the people are. If your friends are over, introduce them like, hey, everybody, like, check out, this is so-and-so. Like, we kind of bring them into your life as much as possible. Plan ahead, right? Like something we know about experiences, like experiences are so much more important than material things. But one of the things you really get out of a benefit of an experience is you plan a trip for 2 weeks from now, or you get to see your partner 2 weeks from now. You now have 2 weeks of anticipation leading up to it. So make sure you're doing those kinds of things. Like you should have planned. When you do see each other, try to have all of your mundane stuff done and out of the way so that the time when your partner and you are together, you're just actually enjoying each other. That's one of the big benefits of long distance relationships. That you get to constantly date, and it's not like, sorry, I got to do laundry. It's like, no, you do laundry on Thursday if your partner's coming on Saturday. And the last thing is that there's a ton of, in preparation for this, I started doing like just a little bit of digging around about like, there's got to be technology that helps with this stuff. And they're not a sponsor of this podcast, though they absolutely should be, and maybe will be soon. But there's this app called Between that is essentially just a one-to-one conversation with you and your partner, like videos. It's got a built-in countdown. It's texting. And it's all the crap that you see people put on social media about their relationship that everyone just kind of like hates.
Yeah.
But it's just between you and your partner. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey babe, check out this thing, or like, this is us, or like you can send like a goofy little thing, and it's like, it's just you and your partner, and no one has to be involved. I'm like, that's genius. So that's at least one of them, and there's a couple others, but there's just one more. Rave is this thing where you and your partner can watch like Netflix and other shows together, so like you can be hundreds of miles apart, but like you can both sit down and like watch Ted Lasso together or whatever other show you're watching, like. That it was big during the pandemic, but like that's huge for long distance couples for sure.
Yeah, we were recommending that during the pandemic. Let me tell you, when we were coaching for that, however long that went on during the quarantine, that was one of the strategies we had for our clients when they'd go on first dates, because there's all FaceTime, it's all Zoom. We would have them watch a movie, and it didn't really work very well. It was a tough time to date, let me tell you. Tough time, but sure, glad we're past that.
Yeah, I mean, like, in a long...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, in a long-term established relationship, I think some of those things can work. Like, there's other ones, too, that it's like, Gottman has a card deck where it's like you and your partner share, like, it's a bunch of prompts and activities that couples do together.
Yeah.
I think all that stuff's really, really weird with dating, but for long-term relationships, it's like we talk about all the time. It's like what gets you together isn't what keeps you together, and you kind of have to be good at both. And so, there's different rules for dating and long-term when it comes to long-distance relationships.
Yeah. Well, as always, it's nuanced, and we're all over the map, clearly, on this. But I think, to sum it up, my stance is, if you're dating, do everything that you can in your power to date locally. But if you find yourself in a long-distance relationship, which can sometimes happen, even if you're being intentional with your love life, be very intentional about your communication and how it is that you go about it. Because if you aren't, it's going to fall apart real quick. I don't know. Does that sum it up? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's not a great way to start, but if it happens, there are definitely techniques and strategies to help you navigate that time. And in many ways, it can be like, rather than a setback, it can be a secret to success for long-term relationships. Again, because you're building a lot of emotional intimacy, which is what keeps you together long-term.
Yeah. Amen. All right. I think we'll leave it at that. Gary, I'm going to see you in New York City as soon as possible. We're going to hang out and party, or maybe I'll just come to the dirty jers. I don't know. They get wild.
Yeah, you come out to Central Jersey.
Do they call it the dirty Jersey in Central Jersey? Or
No, they
yeah.
they
Do they call it the dirty Jersey anywhere, or did I just make that up?
Other people probably do, but
Okay.
I'm actually not from Jersey, so I'm comfortable with it. But I know a lot of people that live here would not be comfortable with that.
I see. So it's offensive. Got it. Okay. I won't travel. Probably. Well, on that note, thank you all so much. This is super fun, and we're here for you anytime. All right. Thanks, Gary.
Bye bye.